Blizzard Entertainment is one of the oldest remaining video game companies and one of the most storied in the history of video games. For nearly 20 years from their inception to a point in World of Warcraft that I will talk about in a moment, they just released hit after hit after hit non-stop. Games that were well received, beloved, never really had that much issue. The name Blizzard carried with it an expectation of excellence, and its fan base was rewarded each and every time. It didn't matter the genre, it didn't matter the year, it didn't matter what they tackled. They were the best at what they did. Now, the first time that Blizzard ever was in a situation where they were receiving negative response to something was with Cataclysm, a World of Warcraft expansion that was absolutely despised by the player base. It still remains to this day the worst thing that Blizzard has ever done to World of Warcraft, and considering how old that game is now, that's saying a lot. That expansion dropped their player base to nearly half. It caused a just gigantic wave of discontent and downright hatred because of what had been done. And the game has never recovered since. They have released good expansions since then, but they've never been able to recapture the glory of the early days of World of Warcraft. And it is in large part because of the aftermath of Cataclysm. It just destroyed the game, and there was no going back on that. Now, that was Blizzard's first taste of discontent among its player base, but it wasn't with a game, it was just with an expansion. The first actual game that really put a nail into what was going on at Blizzard was Diablo 3. And I could make an entire video explaining what went wrong and why with Diablo 3. But suffice to say, the online auction house, the always online nature of what was predominantly a single player game, and everyone's favorite meme, Error 37. Blizzard releases have always been expected to be a little bit laggy and buggy due to the large nature of their player base that jumps in all at once. This was the thing with their multiplayer games. This was not expected with a predominantly single-player game, especially one that would not let them play the single-player portion because the always online nature of the multiplayer part wouldn't let them. Error 37 became one of the biggest memes on the internet, still holds a shrine in internet history to this day, and that Diablo 3 was seen as what I like to call the beginning of the great decline of Blizzard. Since then, Blizzard has just had terrible reception after mediocre game after just horrible screw up. It's not been getting better. In many ways, it's been getting worse. The next game that they released was Hearthstone, which that was probably the last game that Blizzard released that was very well received by Blizzard fans and the player base. It's every expansion thereafter that has made Hearthstone a nightmare. But upon its early release, Hearthstone was well received. What really helped Hearthstone more than any other game that they've made since is that they were pretty much the sole big guy in the ocean at that point. Magic the Gathering has had a stranglehold on card games since the 90s. The key difference here than any other time is Magic didn't have a online stranglehold. They had a physical stranglehold. And Blizzard was able to tap into that gap in the market at the perfect time. Since then, a lot of other companies have been trying to play catch up with Blizzard, but they haven't been able to quite capture that yet. Even Magic, only this year, finally released something that could be called competent for an online version of Magic the Gathering. And at this point, you're a little late. Even if the Hearthstone player base is diminishing, no matter how much Blizzard likes to deny it, it's still the most popular digital card game on the market because everyone else was too late. For once, Blizzard was actually ahead of the curve. Everything since is the exact opposite. Heroes of the Storm came next in 2014. A game so bad, so poorly received, they had to revamp the entire game back in the beginning of 2017 to Heroes of the Storm 2.0 because they were a latecomer to the MOBA scene, and it was a very poor MOBA. That's a game that I still question why Blizzard keeps around at all. I guess it's because they just refuse to give up and admit defeat. There is a very small player base for that game. It's not played that much. There's no competitive scene for it. It just exists because Blizzard wants it to. That's really all there is to it. Granted, the people that play it now do really enjoy it. From what I have seen, it is a very good, more casual style MOBA. It's fun. They do unique events for it. There's nothing really inherently wrong with it right now. It's this weird oddity in Blizzard's library that, by all accounts, does nothing and shouldn't exist, but Blizzard just doesn't want to give up on it. Their next big game was Overwatch. And that is a game, that one I really do question why they keep trying to make that a competitive scene game, because the competitive scene really doesn't exist with that game. It couldn't beat out Team Fortress 2, the game that it was obviously emulating. It couldn't beat out any other shooter game. It's already past its prime because battle royales have become the new it thing. It appeared too late in the hero shooter genre. The only thing that Overwatch has really done that's left an impact on the gaming world is they modernized and standardized loot boxes. And yes, I know people will always point to Team Fortress 2 as the creator of loot boxes, and I'm not disagreeing. I specify modernize and standardize because if you look at what Team Fortress 2 does with loot boxes, it is vastly different than what Overwatch does. And ever since Overwatch found a way to just streamline loot boxes, that is the model that every single business that has put loot boxes in has done. Look at all games since about 2017. Look at the way that they do loot boxes. EA's Battlefront 2, that style of loot crate, I think they called them, that was very much Overwatch's loot boxes. And look at any game. They pretty much follow that same formula. That is Overwatch's biggest contribution to the gaming scene. Otherwise, it's just a blip in the radar at best. It doesn't have a very big player base. It has no competitive scene at all, no matter how much Blizzard has tried with it. Say what you will about Hearthstone. They at least have some competitive scene. Overwatch has nothing. Which is weird because shooters are well known for their competitive scene. And this one can't even get one off the ground. The other big thing Overwatch is kind of known for is the just draconian way they rule over their toxic player base. They have gone above and beyond trying to get rid of anything they deem as bad or offensive. They are catering to a specific demographic, the hipsters, the millennials, and the gaming journalists. To the point where Overwatch will now ban you if you say something they don't like on random social media sites, and they can tie that to your BNet account. That's how fucked up they are right now. And I believe that that's why, to this day, the gaming media is so quick to defend them. Because Blizzard, especially in Overwatch, does the right things, says the right things, follows their political ideology to the letter. So the gaming media is championing their top virtue signaling company. And that will make a lot more sense when I talk about Blizzard's newest and unfortunate biggest coming game. This is what made me make this video. Diablo Immortal. Now, mobile gaming as a whole, I don't have a problem with that existing. It can do what it wants in its own little space, be its own little thing. I don't care. It's not for me. I'm not going to play it. I don't play any mobile games. They just aren't my thing. I have a computer. But I can see why they exist. I understand why they exist, and to the people that like them, good on you. You can enjoy what you want. The problem is the big AAA companies at large, or at least the publishers, have it in their heads that mobile gaming is much more financially viable than PC or console gaming. So they have shifted all efforts from PC and console, where a lot of these series originated, to mobile. They've downgraded, they've streamlined, they've monetized out the ass. They've done everything that people were afraid of when mobile gaming started its rise to prominence. That's the issue that I have. That's the issue that everyone else has, is that these companies have given up on their original player base and are now jumping ship to a player base that will drop $1,000 in microtransactions because they're gambling addicts. And that is the biggest issue with Diablo Immortal. Diablo Immortal was announced at BlizzCon, a convention that is predominantly, probably to the effect of 90-95%, PC-centric. A convention made by Blizzard for Blizzard fans. For the people that have played Blizzard games forever. People had been begging for a new Diablo thing. because Diablo 3 was absolute shit, and Blizzard basically abandoned it because of that, because of its poor initial reception. They just threw it away. They released Reaper of Souls in 2014. That fixed the majority of the game. And then after that, nothing. You got maybe an event here, a Necromancer skin there for, I think it was $15 or $20. They didn't really do anything with Diablo 3. Not even another expansion. So, for the past 6 months, Blizzard had been hyping up that something Diablo this way comes. And people were incredibly stoked. They thought, yes, finally, this is the time that we are getting our D4 announcement, or at the very least, a new expansion, or something to help keep this game going. 2 weeks before BlizzCon, just 2 weeks, after 6 months of hype, 2 weeks before BlizzCon, they announced, well, you might want to lower your expectations. After all the tickets were sold, after all the hotel bookings were made, after all the virtual tickets were sold, then they decided to announce, you might want to lower your expectations a bit. They didn't say that D4 wasn't coming. They gave a vague statement to lower your expectations. Too late. That's your own damn fault, Blizzard. That and the fact that on the BlizzCon shop that appears before BlizzCon even starts, they had Diablo mugs, Diablo hoodies, etc. The only reason you would have those kind of things is if something big Diablo is coming. It was a new image for Diablo, one that had never been seen in a game before. So people knew something new, a new game, a new expansion, knew something was coming with Diablo. You opened up Pandora's box, you can't close that shit again. Especially when your fucking greed is selling fucking hoodies before the announcement. And then, as BlizzCon's showstopper, the very last thing they did as an announcement, Diablo Immortal, a mobile game. They screwed themselves. Blizzard should have known what the fuck was coming. I can't believe they didn't. I really can't. It was amazing to watch just how blown away they were by the fact that people who were PC players, who wanted a new PC Diablo thing, had been begging for one for about 6 years, didn't want a mobile game. There was a person that asked if this was a late April Fool's joke. You don't ask that as a troll. You ask that as someone that is actually upset and trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. Why you are abandoning the audience that has spent 20 plus years playing your games. In that Q&A, there was another question, if this would ever be ported to PC. They said no. This was only going to be Android and iOS. People booed. Then, the head developer, in what I can only call the stupidest moment of any Q&A in video gaming history, said, "What, do you people not own phones?" I would like to present that as evidence for how to kill your career in 10 words or less. That was the most insulting thing I have ever heard from a developer. of all the things that they could have said, and I have been told that they said it in a joking manner, that they were trying to calm the audience, that they were trying to put a little brevity to the situation. There's this thing called reading the audience. That was not the time nor the place to do that, especially in such a dismissive tone as was done. I remember a few years ago when Blizzard, in an interview, said, I believe it was about about World of Warcraft Vanilla, which is now a thing, by the way, that they said in a press briefing, you think you want that, but you don't. At the time, I thought that would be the record holder for the most insulting and dismissive thing I have ever heard and would ever hear from a video game company. Blizzard found a way to top themselves. I didn't think it was possible. What they did at their presentation, announcing a mobile game as your new big thing, it can work. It has in the past. Bethesda has done it twice. They announced Fallout Shelter, and then they quickly showed, right after that Fallout 4 is coming. That this was a little placeholder to keep interest up, as a little side thing that they had always wanted to do, just as a side thing, not as a main thing. So that people could just enjoy a little thing while they waited for Fallout 4. That game, upon its release, beat Angry Birds and Candy Crush as the most moneyed game on mobile. That was in Candy Crush's peak days, by the way. Fallout Shelter beat Candy Crush. That never happened at that point. And it was well received because they made it clear this was a little side thing. Here's the main course. They did it again this year. They announced Elder Scrolls Blades, I believe it's called, as a mobile game. And then they ended that presentation with a 10-second cutscene, or cinematic, or whatever you want to call it, of a landscape with the title Elder Scrolls 6. That's all they needed to do. It's a little side project to keep people interested. Here's the main course. We have not forgotten our player base. EA has screwed up with this twice now. Dungeon Keeper Mobile, because they announced that as the big thing for Dungeon Keeper, and Command & Conquer Mobile, which they announced as the big thing for Command & Conquer. What Blizzard did is the exact same thing as what EA did. They announced it as the next big thing for Diablo. It was only the next day after all the backlash happened that they came out and said, no, there's other things in the works with Diablo. This isn't it. We aren't just working on mobile. No, there's other stuff going on. Don't worry. You fucked up. You're too late. You should have announced that at BlizzCon right then and there, not a day fucking later. That's your screw up, not the audience for being toxic and trolly. They were reacting to the information given to them. Because you don't want to say anything, that's not our fault. That's yours. The company that's making Diablo Immortal, that we later found out, was NetEase, a company that apparently has the Chinese license to translate and distribute all Blizzard games in China. That's pretty much how they got the right to make Diablo Immortal, or how they were picked to make Diablo Immortal. From everything that I've seen, and I've looked into this, Diablo Immortal is just a reskin of another game that they have. They classify this as an MMO ARPG. So it's once again going to be an always online thing. They failed with that for PC. Now they've realized, oh hey, we can do it with phone because that's how phones work. They are always online by nature of the mobile device. I can guarantee there's going to be an auction house in this again. That's what Blizzard learned from Diablo 3. That they were trying to do the always online auction house thing with the wrong audience. The mobile audience is perfect for it. And to their credit, they're absolutely right. That is the audience that is used to microtransactions. That is the audience that is used to being gouged left, right, and center. PC, to some degree at least, actually still has some standards and will fight against that shit. Mobile, that's been day one. So they're used to that. I remember in the relatively early days of mobile, they actually did try to bring PC and console games to mobile. XCOM, they actually did a nearly one-to-one port from PC to technically tablet, but if a mobile device could run it, then yeah. It was $20. It was basically the same game, just touched down a little bit so that it could work on mobile. No one bought it. No one bought it because $20 on mobile is exorbitantly expensive, and it's not a genre that's played on mobile. They just couldn't find a way to make it work for the mobile audience. The mobile audience just wasn't there for it. And once again, mobile likes very different things from what PC and console like. That's fine. I have no issue with that. They can like what they like. I can like what I like. They can exist in their own spheres, much as I exist in my own sphere. The problem is when companies try and push these established products onto a different scene and try and drag the old audience with it and decry them as toxic or horrible or entitled if they don't want to follow that new scene that they're being dragged to. I am so tired of the gaming media calling gamers entitled for not liking something. Oh, if you don't play Diablo Immortal, then you're just entitled. Oh, really? Me choosing where I spend my money is entitlement, is it? Okay. That word has lost all meaning. Congratulations. The gaming media basically became Blizzard's shill and watchdog to make sure that everyone knew how horrible the fan base was and that it's not Blizzard's fault. They didn't lose touch with their audience. No. It's the audience that lost touch with Blizzard. A couple days later, after BlizzCon had finished, or right as BlizzCon was finishing, the creators of Diablo Immortal doubled down and did what I think might be the stupidest thing that could have been done at that moment. In the press briefing, they announced that, and I'm slightly paraphrasing here, all of Blizzard's best developers are currently working on mobile games. Blizzard doesn't understand why people are pissed. This is exactly what people were saying, and Blizzard was denying until they fucking said it in the press briefing. I think accidentally. That Blizzard is abandoning their initial player base, the ones that made them the juggernaut that they are now. That they are putting all of their efforts into a new audience that has not bought their shit and hasn't been proven to be able to pay for their shit or want to pay for their shit. It honestly doesn't shock me because this seems to be the de-evolution of the AAA industry at large right now. And Blizzard has been going down for almost a decade now. Ever since Cataclysm, but especially since Diablo 3. Blizzard has been falling further and further down. It's funny that we've come full circle, that Blizzard's first full game that was bad was Diablo, and now their biggest controversy that might lead to the final destruction of the company is Diablo. They've lost what their audience wants, who their audience are. They're banking on a new mobile audience, which there are a lot more people, yes, but you can't prove that they will want what you're selling. This is a gamble. Granted, a fairly safe gamble, I would think, but it's a gamble nonetheless. And if it turns out that they can't pay for what you're selling, or they don't want to, and you try and crawl your way back to the PC market that you abandoned, they're not going to bite. They are going to remember this. They're going to be pissed. I am really sad to see this happen. A company that made some of my favorite games. I am old school. I've played D1 and D2 forever. I've played a lot of Blizzard games. I still play Hearthstone to this day. And to see Blizzard just go down this route that every other company is, it's sad. It's unfortunately expected, but it's still sad nonetheless. And I just I don't know what to think anymore. That the companies will so casually just throw away their audience that they will do it on a whim, just trying to go for the new mega casual audience that is the it thing of the moment. That may pay off. Right now, I can guarantee that is not going to last. And when they come back, because they will, people are going to remember this. And they are not going to buy your shit. Blizzard has relied on 20 years of amazing fan loyalty. One of the best and biggest in the industry. In the past decade, they've done everything they can to shoot that loyalty down and kill it. And this was the final nail in the coffin. They've destroyed every last shred of loyalty and goodwill they had. The media is the only one left that will defend them. And that will stop as soon as the paychecks don't clear. This has been Math Machine, giving a rather long history of Blizzard and why they have been going lower and lower and will continue to do so until they are no longer relevant at all. Peace out.